can you tell me a little bit about yourself as an artist, as a cellist, or as anything about your identity?
All right.
Just tell me a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, sounds good. So my name is Nancheng, and I'm a classical cellist based in New York City, and right now I'm a professor in colleges, and I also freelance and play a lot of concerts here and there, and travel to perform and teach mostly. And I'm originally from Taiwan, and came to the States when I was 12 years old, and been studying music ever since, and went to Juilliard for my musical training.
Great. What made you want to become a cellist and why?
So yeah, I started playing the piano and the cello when I was young, like many Asian children. I was told by my parents to do some music, and I guess they saw some talents, or I guess now that I recall, maybe they must have seen my musicality that was able to present when I at a very young age, and they encouraged me to keep doing it, and I just ended up liking the cello more than the piano, and had some really good teachers when I was growing up with the cello, and then I just decided to keep doing it, and just haven't given up ever since.
Nice. But can you also just talk about why did you come to the U.S. to study cello and master it instead of just staying in a music college or a music university in China or Taiwan?
Sure. Well, first of all, I can't say that I've mastered music. It's a long journey, but yeah, I haven't given up. So that says something about it. And well, it's just a little bit more difficult to receive a quality musical education in Taiwan. I think everybody started doing music, and then there's a lot of academics that you have to go through, and then also there's not as many teachers to study from with respect to my instrument, and yeah, so I think it was a trend back then. I think it still is today. So a lot of classical musicians, they came to either the States or Europe to study with other teachers, and then stay there to perform and teach.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I think it's kind of the same for musical theater. It's like you kind of have to, it's a Western thing, and you have to do it here to get the most original.
That's right. I feel like I was here, and then there was just a lot more concerts I could go to, and a lot more colleagues that I was able to share my life with, basically. And I think you can still achieve a very high level of artistry in Taiwan where I'm from, but it would be much lonelier in a way. I think you just don't have as many friends, and you have to be very different from your surrounding environment in order to become the best at what you do. And I think that in comparison, when I was growing up in the States here, I didn't have to really worry about just being so different. I kind of went along and applied to colleges with everybody else, conservatories, and study with really good teachers. So there's less obstacles in my journey.
So just a quick question: how many years have you been here?
So since year 2000, so that's 22 years, 23.
Oh, so that was back possibly when you were a college student, or?
No, I was about 13 years old.
Oh,
yeah, I was about 13 years old. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So you started really early.
That's right.
Gotcha. That's great. Oh, and you spoke about your. I know this is not on the question list. I apologize for that, but I think you spoke about your not not being worried, not being worried about being different,
Right.
about your experience here.
Yeah.
Can you just talk a bit more about that? Like, is that some difference that you kind of experienced?
Well, I think that it's well, I guess to become the best classical musicians that you can be, it takes a lot of training, just a lot of time, just practicing, and that requires a lot of time. And I don't think that in the Asia culture we're given the luxury of doing uh, music for very long hours versus because you're required to go to school and to do more academics and things like that. And yeah, and then also I think there's just a lot more uh, musicians who are working towards the same goal here in the States. The environment is less competitive in a way. I think in Asia, I think you really have to, if you really want to stand out, there's a sense of you're really competing with your colleagues to get the few opportunities to win a competition or to get into a very very good school or things like that. But in the States, it feels more like we're doing it together. So the sense of this group feeling. So just the whole system itself is a little bit more inviting and welcoming, inviting, and I think it's just more natural. I don't have to worry about just it being like the competing or trying to win over somebody as much. Yeah.
I definitely agree with that. So I think he kind of also talked about the obstacles that you kind of faced. After you moved to the States, you kind of experienced less obstacles than you
Well,
not necessarily less, but
it's just different, I guess. Different.
Different.
Yeah.
Can you just share one of the obstacles that you had on your way to being an artist? Like, it can actually be anything. Like the competition that you didn't feel like doing well in, or
Yeah. Well, to be a musician, there's a lot of auditions and competitions, and you get used to failing at these situations because it's usually it's very difficult to win. And so I do feel like those are disappointments, but when you lose in a competition, it's kind of like normal, really. So I think so. I don't now I think, but I don't feel so like they were not really obstacles. I think they're just it's kind of normal situations that everybody has to go through. I guess the biggest um, obstacle is to be able to be consistent and to believe in that this is what you really want to do, and simply because it takes you so many years, decades of training and being consistent and just not giving up. And I think that's the most difficult part because a lot of time you just um, get lost in 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 what believing in what you're doing, um, especially after you put in so much work and so much practicing. You might give a concert and it's either you don't play well or people don't think that you did such a good job. So these are, I guess, the moments that you start to doubt yourself and things like that. And yeah, I would say that I have to remind myself that this is really what I love and this is what I'm good at, and I have to ignore all the noise around me so that I can really keep doing it.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Right. So just now we shared some obstacles. Can you also share one piece of your artwork, or it can be an artwork or like a piece that you have played or a project that you did that expresses yourself the most, kind of?
that's a
in
tricky
that?
one. Well, I'm a cellist and I don't compose, so I'm an interpreter of music. So it's either I either play classical repertoire or I play a contemporary repertoire that people of my time or my friends that composed. Yeah, I think many I tend to fall in love with the pieces that I play. Um, so many of the great classical works of classical music are are I think the music stays with these music that stay with us today. They stay for a reason. I think yeah, and I love them. So recently I've done a Schubert cello quintet, and that is a tremendously beautiful piece. And Schubert's music is known to feature these lyricism. Uh, I guess somebody called him the king of melodies. So the melodies are really beautiful, and the piece also uses two cellos. Um, First is the traditional string quartet instrumentation. So that was very special. So I was able to work with a group of very good musicians. So as a classical cellist, there are many pieces that I played that really inspired me. And recently, a piece I played is Schubert's cello quintet, or so-called the string quintet, which features two cellos instead of the traditional string quartet format. And Schubert is known for his ability to write really beautiful melodies, and I felt really connected when I was playing to be able to sing through this long, fast duration of melodies in a very simple way, and I found that very satisfying to be able to not only to sing through my instruments but to interpret it in a different way. That's very personal to me.
Cool. All right. So, you mentioned that you moved to the United States at the age of 13. How do you think your Chinese American cultural background has brought you with unique aspects and insights on arts?
Yeah, definitely. We growing up learning classical music, there really hasn't been a strong focus in studying or playing music of the Asian culture, because that's just natural, because I do classical music. Classical music is primarily music of the Europe for in the last 300 years or so, but I do have a lot of contemporary music experience, and I was able to kind of look at the Asian music in a backward manner, with which I kind of studied the contemporary Asian music first, and then through those contemporary music, I get to know a lot of the traditional Asian music, which actually inspired a lot of these contemporary Asian music. So yeah, so that's also very interesting. I've also worked with many Asian composers, both living in Asia and also in the States. So I was able to kind of feel their music, or feel their characters through their music, and to me that is very interesting. And also in our classical scene, there has been a lot of great Asian musicians in our field. And growing up going to Juilliard and or any festival that I go to, I always meet a lot of Asian musicians, whether they're trained here in the States or trained in Asia. And so there was just a lot of connections between my Asian identity to classical music as a field.
That's great. And speaking about, you said that you've met a lot of great Asian musicians and maybe composers as well. How would you say about Asian representation in the performing arts discipline, or like maybe more focused on music industry? How do you think Asian representation has kind of evolved or being more diverse these days? Do you ever feel like there was kind of like a lack of representation, or or it's just the music or the performing music performing field has always been a very inclusive and very diverse field?
Yeah. Yes, I think that's that's a that's a tough question to answer. We know that Asians are one of the minorities, in the States, but it certainly doesn't feel that way when you look at how many Asians are there in professional orchestras or the top music schools such as Juilliard Curtis, which I believe is, I would say at least 30% Asian. Don't take my word for it, but it's a lot of people are Asian. And I would think that, and I don't know what that is. I can guess that maybe it's because Asian people have something about classical music is that it requires a lot of training when you're young. So I would think that maybe that's why a lot of these Asian people do so well, because we were put into training.
Right.
So just different philosophies. But on the other hand, has always been this association between white people and classical music. That's also at the same time true. So I do feel that our classical scene is changing slowly, and that I think more Asian people are being recognized in the classical music field. Well, in fact, one of the most well-known classical musicians in the world, if not the most well-known, is Yo-Yo Ma, and he's Chinese, grew up in France and in the States. So he's definitely one person that really break the boundaries between the color of our skin.
That's awesome. It's really good to hear that. Right, and I just want to ask your understanding of this connection between arts and society. Do you ever feel like you have this sense of mission or sense of duty? Well, it's kind of like, that's not the perfect word to describe it, but if I just say a sense of duty, because arts can have a impact on society, and also it's just very impactful, and if you can speak a little bit about your opinion on in what ways do you think arts or music can influence your surroundings or just the society in general.
Right. I think that art is a very good thing. Like how the Greek philosophers have actually put not just art, but actually specifically music as kind of the foundation of wisdom, kind of first. And then they talk about, the Greek philosophers talk about this balance between just academics, okay, which to them is music, academic, and exercising. So it's really finding the perfect balance of the two. And I do think that at least in the environment that I live in New York City, there's a lot of people who are striving to become, kind of competing for this commercial success, I would say, and music, art and music tends to be neglected in a lot of fields. And I would say that just from my own personal encounters, I feel that people who appreciate some form of art and music tends to have a little bit more interesting perspective on the world that we live in. So I would love to see more creative people around us. Yeah, whether they just learn to appreciate it, or they learn to actually do it themselves. So I think it's just a more colorful world that we are able to bring to the world, and also to influence others. And yeah, and then I think that's why we do music.
That's great. And I think it was interesting that you spoke about the difference between the commercial success and also the artistry aspect of music, and it's kind of like the duality that you were doing art. It's like, oh, you're doing this very, I don't know, it's an impactful thing, but at the same time you're also trying to make, I don't know, it's like if the balance between a commercial success and the artistry of it, it's kind of tricky.
Yeah, I think that's what being an artist these days means. Like nobody. Yes, well, even an artist has to eat, right? So everybody is always, I think the artist is always trying to balance passion and then bring it something different to it, but also be able to live in a society like everybody else. And yeah, but there are also people who only trying to live, right? There are only people who's just trying to live, and that's, I don't think that's healthy. And then so we try to change that. We bring, not everybody has the luxury of making art, and so we bring it to them, kind of, and then we also have to do it. We'll have to balance it ourselves as well.
Sure. You spoke about not every single person in the world have this luxury to create and also to know about the art world, and you're trying to bring that to those people. And
right.
Can you kind of elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, part of my job is to, because as a performer and educator, these are the two things I do. Either I perform or I teach, right? So I think teaching is a great way to share your artistry with somebody else, right? Because people who is learning, they're usually younger people. They're very focused, and it's very easy to interact and share your thoughts directly, and you tend to see them every week and things like that. And in performances, you also get to interact, but in a different way. It's kind of like one-sided. You have to share your thoughts through your art, and for me, that's music. And the audience also has to be willing to receive something, to listen with this creative mindset. They have to be able to be willing to communicate with the performers on stage or the music that they listen to. And I think so. I think just by doing these two things well, as an artist, I think we're doing our job to make a more creative world, really. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I think I've already known that you teach at universities, mainly in New York City.
In New York City, yeah.
Okay, nice. If it's kind of like a thing that if you would send a message to young students, not necessarily your current students, but also just students who are interested or are prospective students who are kind of having the mindset of pursuing art in their future, and also want to be an international artist like you. If you would send these people a message, what would you tell them? What word would you tell them?
Yeah, well, that's very broad.
I don't know.
Yeah,
This is very
it's very
broad.
broad. Well, a broad answer that I would give is just to follow your passion. You know, just like easy to say, hard to do. You know, hard
It's
how to keep
very
track. If it were my young cello students, I would tell them to practice. You know, practice, have a set schedule. You know, how many times or how long you can practice a week, and try to follow through your schedule, and you have to practice even when you don't want to practice, you know, because we all get tired and lazy and stuff. I think part of the most difficult thing about creating music on your own is that there's just so much time you're by yourself, and when you're by yourself, it's hard to get yourself to the desk or to in front of the music stand and sit down and be able to start. Once you start, it's usually fine. But I think just to be able to to get rid of all the distractions and being able to really sit down and focus, and then being able to do that every day or every week for a few days, that's something that's very difficult. And I think a lot of people just can't endure it, this kind of this long process of music making. Yeah, so I would say that just you have to be patient. I would say be patient, and good things or good music will come.
And also, I think that also aligns with something that you said earlier. It's kind of like finding that persistency or consistency
Yeah.
is really.
Yeah, because that's what I
very
tell myself to do, right? And it doesn't get art and music doesn't get easier ever, right? So as you get older, it's actually it's more difficult, and you have to be more focused. And yeah, so I try to tell my students what I do. That's do what you preach. So
That's awesome. Yes, the third question. Let's go back to the third question about. If you would like to share what obstacles did you have on your way to being an established artist? Like, yes, I think it's to just talk
Oh.
about the.
yeah, I
Yes,
don't
that-
even remember what I said.
No, that's
Yeah.
totally fine. I was just
Yeah.
trying to. Well, and also
Sure.
if you have something new that's
Sure.
coming
Yeah.
up,
Sure.
feel free to.
Right. So, obstacles, as an artist, you mean, or just anything?
I guess it's more about obstacles that, let's see, like obstacles that you had on your way to of being a cellist
Cellist. Yeah.
and being a musician, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. There's so many obstacles in life. Kind of difficult to choose which one is the most significant. Well, when I came to the States, I did it by myself, and so that was really really difficult because I went from Taiwan and then went straight to a boarding school in near LA, actually, and then so I was put into a completely new environment with no English skill whatsoever, but it was a art school, like the one that you go to, but in a boarding school. So I was surrounded by dancer, musicians, actress, and a lot of them have this international background. So it was a struggle at first, but then I think I was very lucky that there was this kind of support system that I was able to get. So yeah, so that was one of the first obstacles that I had, and then I had to choose between whether I want to continue playing the cello and the piano with equal focus, or that I have to just do cello, just one instrument and really focus on it to get ahead, or to get better. And that was kind of a difficult choice. I think giving up the piano professionally, that was difficult. At the time, I didn't think too much. I just one less instrument to practice every day. And then, but it just a few years after, I realized that I really like the instrument, but I kind of already forgotten about it. So that's kind of sad part, that being a musician I can't play the piano as well as I play the cello. So that was a funny, like, funny regret that I had. Not that I can't play, I still teach on the piano side I can't, but I know I'm not a, I wouldn't call myself a pianist, that's for sure. Yeah, so that's that. So yeah, I guess things like that happens especially when you are alone, like without your parents in the States, and you make these decisions that is not, I wasn't able to talk to anybody before I made these kind of decisions. So that is also something that is, that was one of the obstacles that I had to grow up with, just being able to survive or to live by myself and making all these decisions at a very young age.
That's so impressive. Like, it's, well, yeah, you were like about, I think you're about like at the age of 13, and
yeah.
you have to make these huge decisions, and also just living in a totally entirely different environment is just, I kind of get how.
Yeah, you would know, yeah, for sure.
Well, I have I have my aunt here, which definitely helped a lot, but
Yeah.
I really kind of,
Yeah, and back then there was
that.
no cell phone and stuff like that, like
Exactly.
so in this year 2000 we had to use these like prepaid phone cards, and we have to go to the like a phone booth,
Tell.
and then to dial, and we have to wait for a few minutes, and then we get to talk to our parents for like 10 minutes, and then the cards, there's out of credit.
Right.
Yeah, so it felt very different back then for sure. Yeah.
That was very interesting. I think. Wait, I just came up with the question. It's not necessarily on the
Yeah.
on the question list, but you after you moved from Taiwan to somewhere
yeah.
in LA, you spoke about that you were in a art high school as well. And after that you went to the Juilliard School, which is also a
Performing arts school.
performing
right,
arts school, basically.
Right.
Is it a conservatory? I think
It's a conservatory. Yeah.
Gotcha. And I was just I had this question in mind just now. Can you just talk a bit about what I have this experience of being in a conservatory high school, like a performing arts high school, and then I switched to a academic, more basically academic high school. But I kind of do performing arts at my spare time,
Right.
like extracurricular activities. I do theater and I dance and I do vocal music. Can you just talk a little bit about your educations? Like, I think it definitely being a musician, being a cellist, to have this sort of very systematic training definitely helped a lot in terms of helping you to become a performing arts, basically musician.
Right.
But if you would have a chance to get a more, well, not to say like more well-rounded education, like not
Right.
you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
What would you make that choice, or would you still pursue the direction of being a musician and go to a conservatory school?
Yeah, I get where you're coming from, because I besides my college kids, I also teach in some of the pre-college level kids, and it's always a dilemma, right? At whether it's better to go to a conservatory, or you go to a university with a good music program and you get both, or you just study major in something else and then you just join the university orchestra and things like that, right? There's also these different options, and it's even trickier to decide to make that decision when you're not a senior in high school yet, right? Because you kind of have to make these decisions a few years earlier.
Right.
Even if you're really good at something, you have to decide I don't know, at least 4 or 5 years, or at least 3 years, I guess, before, so that you can get into these really good schools. I think, yeah, I would say that this decision usually is not students alone. It really has to do with how your family feel it, and you have to. There's a lot of discussions, and now that I'm a teacher, I take parts of the responsibility. I tell parents about whether what I would suggest, and then when I talk about these things, I try to provide different angles and the pros and cons of different things. So that is a luxury for my students to be able to choose, and that was not the case when I was growing up. I was determined, and also my family was very supportive in that way, that I should be a concert cellist, or at least when I was young, at least to get into a really top conservatories. So that was my goal. The whole reason why I came to the States, and I kind of just followed that path and never looked back. So that's kind of like, I would say that I made that choice when I was 12, when I was 13, when I came to the States, because that was the goal. So I feel like I just made that choice maybe 6 years earlier than most kids before they go to college, basically. And yeah, and part of it because I was showing some talents, right? So that's why everybody encouraged me to do it when I was young. And for some people, this might not be something they want to do for the rest of their lives. So that's why a lot of my classmates, well, not a lot, I think just maybe a percentage of Juilliard, my Juilliard colleagues, decide not to do music after that. And it's a rather small percentage because it's Juilliard. People who's gone through all the hardship together, and it's hard to give up. I think it's hard to give up, but I think for other schools it's even more difficult. What if you don't get into Juilliard? What if then you have other decisions, more to think about. So yeah, but I can only talk my experience is that I was lucky that I was able to do what I set out to do, and then I never regretted. So I think I was very lucky in that way.
That's very glad to hear that.
Yeah.
I think, well, I kind of, yeah, no, never mind. I kind of derived from like.
Yeah, I mean, everyone has and then I guess your question was like about like would I what do I want to do academics and stuff. Yeah, I feel like I think it's a more well-rounded life for sure. I definitely think so, and but I don't envy it because I feel like people have their their road to take, right?
Sure.
So as long as you're happy with what you do, I think it's fine. It's alright.
And
yeah.
also, I think it's not every single person can be a musician. Like it takes so much hardship and just practice, and also all the sacrifices to
Right.
get and talent, which is
Right.
a part that you can't ever ignore to be a musician.
Right.
But it's so fascinating that you kind of made this choice when you were such a young age.
Well, it wasn't like I just decided. No, it was just it's like a slowly it just kind of like evolved into that choice kind of thing. Yeah. I think but yeah.
Great. Good. But that's very that's
Yeah.
what you shared was very fascinating. I think I don't know. That's all. That's mostly all I want to ask.
Okay.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share personally, or you're?
No, I think I'm good.
That's fine. No, that's
All right.
perfect.
Thank you.